They sell you stories of honorable defeats, noble failures, and virtuous victims who maintain their dignity despite powerlessness. They teach you that honor exists independently of results, that virtue transcends circumstances, that moral superiority can flourish in the soil of practical impotence. But these are the lies told to keep the weak content with their weakness. Tonight, we shatter these comfortable delusions with a truth so sharp it cuts through centuries of moral mythology. There is no honor without power. Honor without power is not honor. It is performance art for an audience that doesn't care. It is the desperate theater of the impotent, the final refuge of those who have failed to build the strength necessary to command genuine respect. True honor is not a participation trophy awarded for good intentions or moral posturing. It is the recognition that flows naturally to those who possess the power to shape reality according to their will, to protect what they value, and to enforce the standards they proclaim. Tonight we descend into the philosophical depths where comfortable illusions about virtue go to die and harsh truths about power emerge from the ashes of moral fantasy. We will explore why powerless virtue is not virtue, but weakness disguised as principle, why honorable defeats are actually dishonorable failures, dressed in noble language, and why the world respects only those who possess the strength to enforce their values rather than merely proclaim them. Through the ruthless political realism of Niccolò Machiavelli, who understood that power precedes respect, and that princes without power cannot maintain honor regardless of their personal virtue, through the psychological insights of Carl Jung, who revealed that honor without power represents an unintegrated persona desperately seeking external validation for internal inadequacy, through the will-to-power philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, who saw that authentic honor emerges from strength rather than submission, from self-creation rather than self-sacrifice, through the warrior wisdom of Sun Tzu, who recognized that victory creates virtue while defeat destroys it, and through the existential courage of those who build power before claiming honor, we will uncover why power is not the enemy of honor, but its prerequisite, not the corruption of virtue, but its foundation. By the end of this philosophical confrontation with reality, you will understand why the powerless remain unhonored regardless of their moral claims, why strength commands respect while weakness invites exploitation, and why building power is not the abandonment of honor, but the only path to honor that cannot be revoked by those who would prefer you remain weak. The question that will determine whether you live with genuine honor or die with empty virtue is this: will you continue to seek honor through powerless moral posturing, or will you build the power necessary to command the honor you believe you deserve? Niccolò Machiavelli understood something that escapes most people. Honor is not a moral category, but a political one. It is not awarded based on virtue, but commanded through power. It is not given to the deserving, but taken by the capable. His analysis of political dynamics reveals that those who possess power define what honor means, while those who lack power must accept whatever definitions are imposed upon them by their superiors. The prince who has no power will never be honored, regardless of his personal virtue, moral superiority, or good intentions. History is written by the victorious, and history consistently honors those who possessed the strength to shape events, rather than those who possessed the virtue to endure them. The powerless may be pitied, sympathized with, or even admired for their endurance, but they are not honored in any meaningful sense, because honor requires the ability to enforce standards rather than merely maintain them. Machiavelli observed that effective leaders understand this dynamic and therefore focus on building power before seeking honor, on establishing strength before claiming respect, on demonstrating capability before expecting recognition. They know that honor without power is temporary at best and illusory at worst, that it can be revoked at any moment by those who possess superior force, influence, or strategic position. Consider how this operates in practice. The businessman who maintains ethical standards while his company fails is not honored but forgotten. The politician who holds firm to moral principles while losing elections gains no lasting respect. The individual who proclaims high values while lacking the power to implement them receives no genuine honor from a world that respects results rather than intentions. Machiavelli's insight reveals that what we often call honor in powerless people is actually something closer to pity, a consolation prize offered to those who cannot command genuine respect through achievement, influence, or capability. This pseudo-honor serves to pacify the powerless by giving them something to cling to that makes their powerlessness feel noble rather than pathetic. The Machiavellian perspective shows that true honor flows from the demonstrated ability to protect what you value, to enforce what you proclaim, and to create the conditions you believe should exist, rather than merely hoping someone else will create them. Honor without this demonstrated capability is not honor, but self-deception disguised as virtue. From this analysis emerges the recognition that seeking honor before building power is not admirable, but backwards, like trying to harvest crops before planting seeds, like expecting respect before demonstrating competence, like demanding recognition before creating value. The sequence matters because honor, that is not based on power, can be eliminated by those who possess superior power. Machiavelli understood that the world honors capability rather than intention, results rather than effort, and effectiveness rather than moral purity. The prince who accepts this reality and builds power accordingly can then use that power to create and enforce honorable standards. The prince who rejects this reality and seeks honor through powerless virtue discovers that such honor evaporates the moment it conflicts with the interests of those who possess actual strength. The political wisdom that Machiavelli provides is that honor and power are not opposites but partners, that genuine honor requires the power to maintain it, and that power without honor becomes mere brutality that ultimately undermines itself. But the sequence is crucial. Power must be built before honor can be claimed. Strength must be demonstrated before respect can be expected. This understanding transforms the entire approach to building a life of genuine honor. Instead of seeking honor through moral posturing or virtuous suffering, the Machiavellian individual focuses on developing the capabilities necessary to shape their environment according to their values. Instead of proclaiming principles they cannot enforce, they build the power necessary to make their principles reality. Carl Jung's exploration of the persona reveals the psychological mechanisms through which honor without power becomes a form of psychological compensation for inadequacy, a mask worn to hide weakness rather than an authentic expression of strength. His analysis shows that people often develop elaborate concepts of personal honor precisely because they lack the power to command recognition through achievement or capability. Jung understood that the persona, the face we present to the world, can become disconnected from our actual capabilities and achievements. When we use it to claim honor, we have not earned through demonstrated power. This creates what he would recognize as psychological inflation, where the individual believes their self-proclaimed virtue entitles them to respect regardless of their actual ability to create value or influence outcomes. The person who seeks honor through persona rather than power often develops what Jung called a savior complex, the belief that their moral superiority, despite their practical impotence, makes them valuable and worthy of recognition. They become addicted to the psychological satisfaction of feeling morally superior to those who possess more worldly power, using their claimed virtue as compensation for their demonstrated weakness. This psychological dynamic creates a form of resentment, where the powerless individual needs to believe that power corrupts honor rather than enables it, that virtue exists independently of capability rather than being demonstrated through it, that moral superiority transcends practical effectiveness rather than being expressed through it. These beliefs serve to protect the ego from acknowledging its own inadequacy while providing psychological justification for remaining powerless. Jung observed that this compensation mechanism prevents genuine psychological development because it allows the individual to feel good about themselves without developing the capabilities that would actually make them worthy of genuine respect. They become trapped in a cycle where they seek honor through moral posturing rather than through building the power necessary to enforce their proclaimed values. The Jungian insight reveals that authentic honor requires what he called individuation, the integration of all aspects of the personality, including the shadow material that contains aggressive, competitive, and power-seeking impulses that our culture often teaches us to repress. Without this integration, honor remains a persona performance rather than an authentic expression of integrated strength. The person who has completed individuation understands that honor and power are not contradictory, but complementary, that genuine honor emerges from the demonstrated ability to live according to chosen values, even when doing so requires strength, courage, and the willingness to confront opposition. They recognize that powerless virtue is not virtue at all, but psychological compensation for the failure to develop genuine capabilities. Jung's analysis extends to recognizing that those who claim honor without power often project their shadow onto those who possess power, seeing them as corrupted or immoral, precisely because their strength highlights the projector's weakness. This projection serves to maintain the illusion that virtue and power are incompatible, rather than acknowledging that authentic virtue requires the power to maintain it. The psychological path to genuine honor requires abandoning the comfort of powerless moral superiority and embracing the challenge of building the capabilities necessary to enforce your values in the real world. This means developing practical skills, building influence, and accepting the responsibility that comes with the power to shape outcomes according to your principles. Friedrich Nietzsche approached the relationship between honor and power through his analysis of master and slave moralities, revealing how the weak have redefined honor to make their weakness appear virtuous, while making strength appear corrupt. His insights expose how honor without power often represents slave morality's attempt to claim moral superiority despite practical inferiority. Nietzsche observed that master morality, the value system of those who possess power, defines honor in terms of strength, achievement, nobility, and the ability to impose one's will on circumstances. For the master, honor emerges from demonstrated capability, from the creation of value, from the successful pursuit of difficult objectives that lesser individuals cannot achieve. Slave morality, in contrast, defines honor in terms of endurance, suffering, submission, and moral purity that exists independently of practical effectiveness. For the slave, honor comes from maintaining virtue despite powerlessness, from enduring injustice without retaliation, from accepting circumstances rather than changing them. Nietzsche recognized that this slave morality definition of honor serves the psychological needs of those who lack the strength to build genuine power, but need to maintain their self-respect despite their practical impotence. By redefining honor to exclude power, they can claim moral superiority over those who actually shape reality according to their will. But Nietzsche saw through this psychological maneuver, recognizing that honor without power is not honor but resentment disguised as virtue. The powerless person who claims honor through moral superiority alone is not demonstrating authentic virtue, but expressing envy of those who possess the strength they lack, and the resentment of those who cannot achieve what they cannot achieve. The Nietzschean analysis reveals that authentic honor requires what he called the will to power, not the will to dominate others, but the will to overcome obstacles, transcend limitations, and create value where none existed before. This will to power manifests as the drive to build the capabilities necessary to shape reality according to chosen values, rather than merely enduring reality as it is imposed by others. From this perspective, seeking honor without building power represents a fundamental misunderstanding of what honor actually is. Honor is not a consolation prize for the unsuccessful. It is the natural recognition that flows to those who demonstrate excellence, strength, and the ability to create value in the world. The person who lacks this ability may deserve sympathy or assistance, but they do not deserve honor simply for existing or for maintaining moral standards they lack the power to enforce. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch represents the individual who has transcended slave morality's false opposition between honor and power. Recognizing that authentic honor can only emerge from the strength to live according to self-created values, even when doing so requires confronting opposition, overcoming obstacles, and accepting the responsibility that comes with the power to influence outcomes. The Übermensch does not seek honor from others, but creates the conditions under which honor naturally flows to those who deserve it through demonstrated capability. They understand that begging for honor while lacking power is undignified, that claiming virtue while accepting impotence is contradictory, and that genuine respect can only be commanded by those who possess the strength to enforce their proclaimed standards. Nietzsche's path to authentic honor requires what he called self-overcoming, the continuous process of transcending current limitations, developing greater capabilities, and accepting greater responsibilities. This process necessarily involves building power, because self-overcoming requires the ability to shape circumstances rather than merely endure them. The person who follows this path discovers that honor and power are not enemies, but partners in the creation of a life worthy of genuine respect. They learn that powerless virtue is not virtue, but weakness, that honor without capability is not honor, but pretense, and that the world honors only those who demonstrate the strength to make their proclaimed values into lived reality. The practical implications of understanding that honor requires power extend into every area of life where you might seek respect, recognition, or genuine influence over outcomes that matter to you. This understanding eliminates the waste of energy that comes from seeking honor through moral posturing while neglecting the development of actual capabilities. In professional contexts, the person who understands this relationship focuses on building demonstrable competence rather than merely proclaiming professional ethics, on creating measurable value rather than simply maintaining moral standards, on developing influence that can protect their values rather than just hoping others will respect their principles. The professional who seeks honor without power often becomes ineffective and ultimately dispensable, someone whose moral standards are appreciated in theory but ignored in practice because they lack the capability to enforce those standards when they conflict with others' interests or convenience. In personal relationships, understanding the honor-power relationship means building the strength to protect what you value, rather than merely hoping others will respect your boundaries. Developing the capability to create the conditions you prefer, rather than simply enduring whatever conditions others impose. The person who seeks relational honor without relational power often becomes a victim of others' preferences, manipulation, or neglect, because they lack the strength to enforce their standards or create the relationship dynamics they actually want. In social contexts, this understanding means building influence that can shape conversations and outcomes, rather than merely maintaining moral positions that others can ignore, developing the capability to create positive change rather than simply criticizing negative conditions. The socially powerless person who claims honor through moral superiority alone often becomes irrelevant to actual decision-making processes, excluded from real influence, and relegated to the role of moral commentator on events shaped by those who possess actual power. The defense against powerless honor requires what could be called capability building, the systematic development of skills, influence, resources, and strategic position that create the power necessary to enforce your proclaimed values in real-world situations where those values will be tested. This capability building begins with honest assessment of your current power level across various domains: professional, financial, social, physical, intellectual, and the systematic work of developing greater capability in areas that matter for your objectives. It means focusing more energy on building strength than on proclaiming virtue, more effort on creating influence than on claiming moral superiority. The person who builds power before claiming honor discovers that genuine respect flows naturally to those who demonstrate competence, that authentic recognition emerges from proven capability, and that real influence comes from the demonstrated ability to create value and shape outcomes according to chosen principles. The ultimate recognition is that honor without power is not just ineffective, it is dishonest. It represents the claim to deserve respect without demonstrating the capabilities that earn respect, the demand for recognition without providing the value that justifies recognition, the expectation of influence without building the strength that creates influence. Genuine honor requires the courage to build power before claiming respect, to develop capability before expecting recognition, to demonstrate value before demanding honor. This is not the corruption of virtue, but its authentic expression, the willingness to do the difficult work of becoming worthy of the honor you seek, rather than simply proclaiming your entitlement to it. The choice that determines whether you achieve genuine honor or remain trapped in powerless virtue signaling is straightforward. Will you continue seeking honor through moral posturing while neglecting power building, or will you focus on developing the capabilities necessary to command the honor you believe you deserve? Honor flows to those who shape reality according to their values, who protect what they claim to value, who enforce the standards they proclaim. Without power, these actions become impossible, and honor becomes nothing more than empty performance for an audience that respects strength rather than weakness, capability rather than intention, results rather than proclamations. Build power first, command honor through demonstrated capability. Create the strength necessary to enforce your proclaimed values. Show the world that your principles are not just opinions, but commitments backed by the power to make them reality. This is not the abandonment of honor. This is its fulfillment. This is not the corruption of virtue. This is its authentic expression. This is not choosing power over principle. This is recognizing that principle without power is pretense, and that honor without strength is illusion. The world honors the capable. Be capable, build power, command respect through demonstrated competence rather than proclaimed virtue. Make your honor indestructible by making it inseparable from your power to maintain it. There is no honor without power. Build your power, claim your honor, become worthy of the respect you seek through the strength to enforce the values you proclaim. Your honor awaits your power. Build it now